This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. The federal government has been shut down for 34 days now. We're right on the brink of this becoming the longest shutdown ever. Democrats say this is a battle over the cost of health care. Health insurance subsidies will expire at the end of the year, and health insurance could get a lot more expensive for millions of Americans. Meanwhile, Saturday was the beginning of open enrollment. Many of us found out how high our insurance premiums could actually go. Later in the hour, we'll be talking through your questions about health insurance and open enrollment. Maybe you logged onto the marketplace this weekend and got overwhelmed with information. You can email us your questions now to vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. But first, I have Democratic Representative to Congress Becca Balint in the studio with me. She's Vermont's sole representative to the U.S. House. She's in the midst of her second term, and she's a member of the Judiciary and Budget Committees. Congresswoman Balint, welcome back to the show.
Very happy to be here, Michaela.
And listeners, if you have questions for Becca Balint about the government shutdown in particular, that's what we're starting with. Tell us your perspective on the stalemate in Washington. You could call in at 800-639-2211. So, Congressman, we're feeling the effects of the shutdown in many different areas. Some of our listeners are federal workers who are furloughed or not getting paid right now. About 65,000 people in Vermont are SNAP enrollees, so they depend on SNAP benefits to be able to buy food. What exactly is happening with SNAP benefits? Will they be reinstated soon?
I really appreciate that question. I just want to say at the top, my heart goes out to all the federal workers right now who are living in this incredible place of anxiety and uncertainty, and we're going to try to get the government open and you paid as soon as possible. Yes, we are in a situation right now that never should have happened. You have a deadline that passed this Saturday for funds coming from the federal government to get submitted into the SNAP program, which is the nutritional assistance program that feeds millions of people, thousands here in Vermont. And in no other shutdown have we had a situation where the federal government, meaning the administration in charge, the presidential administration in charge, did not automatically fund SNAP, that was an understanding that was always accepted, that you don't make people hungry during a government shutdown. And so we discovered at the 11th hour that they were not going to release funds that were already there. There is a contingency fund for this. So that set in motion a lot of hard work last week at those of us in Congress, but more importantly for Vermonters, folks here on the ground in Vermont. You had the E-Board, the Emergency Board meeting, which is members of the House and the Senate, along with the governor, to come up with sort of a stopgap measure to make sure people would still get food. Simultaneously, and that was great news, we got that news at the end of last week. Simultaneously, you had states across the country suing the Trump administration to release the funds that are there.
Including Vermont.
That's right. Vermont was a party to that lawsuit, and they got an initial positive reading this weekend in which a judge out of Massachusetts said, no, these funds need to be released. People need to be fed. Now, in that time, you also had the president trying to imply that he needed to be instructed on how they could do this legally. We know exactly how he can do it legally. It is the same system that is always used. And so whether it is through funds that Vermont will release or whether it is actually these USDA funds that will be released, we anticipate there will be SNAP benefits coming online later this week. But until that happens, I'm going to keep pushing to make sure that the Trump administration does release those funds.
So you and Senators Bernie Sanders and Peter Welch are holding the line with other Democrats who say there needs to be a negotiation around health insurance subsidies before you're going to vote yes on any sort of appropriations bill. In an interview with 60 Minutes that aired yesterday, President Trump called this extortion. Now, the negotiations, or the lack thereof, those are all happening over in the Senate. The House has not been in session since mid-September. Why not? And what have you been doing in the interim?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because it's astounding again, like, we are in unprecedented times. We've never had a time when a presidential administration did not pay SNAP benefits. We never had a time when a president left the country in the midst of a government shutdown and was not there trying to bring parties together. And we have never had a Speaker of the House give up all of his power and authority, and by extension, all of our authority, by disbanding the House. So he has not called Republicans back for weeks and weeks. We have, as Democrats, we have been splitting our time. We are basically doing work in the district every other week, and the weeks in between, we are back in D.C. to try to push Speaker Johnson to actually do what he was elected to do, which is to negotiate. And so this is a very strange dynamic. That, I was a former history teacher and a government teacher. The framers of our Constitution never imagined that there would be a Congress that would willingly give up all of its power and authority to the executive branch. And that's what we see right now in Speaker Johnson disbanding Congress. We're not there doing the work. We don't have the people in the room that need to be negotiating a settlement. And also, this really sticks, this really bugs me, is that we have a Democratic member of the House that he refuses to seat, and her name is Adelita Grijalva. She represents a district in Arizona. She was elected ages ago, and he has been willing, Speaker Johnson has been willing to seat Republican members that were elected in a special election, but he refuses to seat her. It is, as you would say, it's utter chaos.
Congresswoman, you said just a minute ago that we've never had a president who refuses to pay SNAP benefits. I think a lot of Republicans would say that they would point the finger at Democrats, saying that if you just had voted yes on an appropriations bill, we wouldn't be in this position. This is what happens in a shutdown. So I have a question for you there about messaging. Just this weekend, I was talking to somebody in my neighborhood, an older woman who relies on SNAP benefits, and she was telling me she doesn't have enough money for groceries right now. She's hoping to go Friday or Saturday. And she said, I don't know if you've heard, but I've heard this is the Democrats doing this. So I'm just wondering, is the message that you're trying to send, is it getting out, or is this going to end up hurting Democrats in the long run? I mean, we have an election tomorrow.
Yeah, so I want to be really clear that there are several different issues coming into play right now. Yeah. One, you got the top line on let's deal with the ACA and the health insurance, because that's what this is about. Okay, so let me back that up, and then I will circle back around and answer your question. So look, you have Republicans who have tried to dismantle the Affordable Care Act for 15 years. 15 years. They have told us we are going to defund it. We're going to dismantle it. We're going to replace it with something better. For 15 years, they have made this promise. They have never, ever brought forward in 15 years' time a plan to actually fix our healthcare system. I don't think anyone in this country is happy with where we are right now. So we were approaching this deadline around funding the government, and our leadership on the Democratic side said to them, this is a serious issue because premiums are going out this for some, it was in October. For the bulk of the country, it's in November. Mm-hmm. We need to decide this now so people can decide whether they can afford these premium increases. And what they said to us is, yeah, we'll get to it. You open the government, and then we will have a conversation about how to pay for these subsidies that so many Americans rely on. Well, forgive me if I don't trust them, because it's been 15 years when they said they would get to this conversation. It's never happened. And so in terms of the health insurance piece, we know that Americans are with us. We don't usually have agreement at 72% about anything in this country. 72% of Americans polled over the last couple of weeks have said we need to hold the line related to the ACA subsidies. So that's that piece. Mm-hmm. In terms of the food assistance piece, which of course, this is an existential issue for people. People should not be going hungry. And again, whether this individual that you talked to, felt like it was, the Democrats doing this, I just want to make the case again that we have never had a situation where even during a government shutdown, when Republicans, were in the minority, when they wouldn't agree to a continuing resolution, those SNAP benefits were never interrupted. And so I'm always, concerned when we aren't able to get our message out clearly. But in this moment, the most important thing for me is making sure people are getting food this week. Mm-hmm. They never should have missed food on Saturday. Yeah.
Let's go to the phones here. We have David in Duxbury on the line. David, go ahead. Hey, David, can you hear us? All right, we'll come back to David. We also have Andrea in Plainfield. Andrea, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I totally commend you, Becca Balint, and the other Democrats to hold the line. Absolutely. It's ridiculous to want to trust any Republicans that they care about our health insurance premiums and the cuts to Medicaid. Second, why in the world do they get away and don't get punished with cutting the entitlement, which judges said the EBT funds were? That is totally against the law. They're not allowed to do this. They have to have some fines. Otherwise, they never learn. And third, please tell me, how come that when Congress gets shut down and everybody gets sent home, just like the government workers, why do they get still salaries? They don't deserve it.
Thank you, Andrea. Let's start with that question about why members of Congress still
it's outrageous.
Get paid.
It's outrageous. We should not be. We should not be paid. And I can bet that we would get folks all back to the negotiating table a whole lot more quickly if that weren't the case. It's outrageous, and it shouldn't be that way. To her second point, it is totally against the law. And we have seen flagrant violations of federal law from this administration repeatedly, whether we're talking about accepting the Qatari jet, when we talk about the demolition of the East Wing of the White House, when we talk about the fact that the Republicans and the Trump administration are completely violating the Hatch Act right now and using official websites to do partisan politicking. Yes. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we have a system of government that relies on three branches checking each other's power. And I know in this moment, and I hear it from a lot of Vermonters, they don't feel like there's any leg of the stool that is sticking up for them. And that feels really, really frustrated and scary. But I want to reassure you that actually, when we continue to file these amicus briefs, when we partner with outside partners, because as members of Congress, we don't have standing to sue. But as we pursue these through the judicial system, we are winning over and over and over again in the lower courts. Even Trump appointees are ruling in our favor because the law is clear. And it is something that I also have heard from a lot of folks in Vermont, but also when I travel across the country, they say, I want to make sure there's accountability long term for people who are violating the law now. And we certainly have lots of people, both within Congress and lawyers who work for us. We are keeping a very careful record of all the ways in which this administration is breaking the law.
We have David in Duxbury back on the line. David, what is your question or thoughts for Congresswoman Balint?
Yes. My point is that this should not be a political argument, should not prevent Congress from paying the bills. We have a responsibility to pay our bills, all of the bills. This will go back and forth, Democrat versus Republican, one administration to another, but in no case should your petty political arguments keep you from meeting your obligations to pay your bills, period.
Thank you, David, for sharing that.
David, I appreciate your directness and your candor, and I understand the frustration. From where I sit, this is not a petty discussion or argument. For Vermont in particular, healthcare costs, this is an existential threat, not just for individuals and families, for our entire system, because this attack on the ACA subsidies is on top of a nearly $1 trillion cut to Medicaid that came through the Republican funding bill earlier in the summer. And it is threatening our rural hospitals. It's threatening access to care. And so actually, I disagree with you that it's a petty argument. We have to try to bring people back to the table, and they have not been willing to do it.
On the subject of these subsidies, as you've mentioned, they're set to end at the end of the year. These subsidies were increased during the COVID era, and we saw a lot of federal government funding increase during COVID, and it's led to some really tough adjustments when that money goes away. I mean, we've seen it in our school systems here in Vermont, too. I don't want to overly compare apples to oranges, but this is sort of like a big picture strategy question for you, Congresswoman. I'm curious if the last 5 years or your last couple of years in office have changed the way that you think about voting yes on federal funding increases that could be rolled back by a future administration. I mean, we're also hyper-focused on this shutdown, but is there a way to avoid this type of like flip-flopping or changing of government funding that causes so much havoc on the local level?
Oh, I appreciate this question so much. I was talking with some state legislators yesterday, and they said what has been so clear to them is they can no longer rely on having a stable federal partner right now. And so they're seeing it as well. But
this isn't just a change to in the Trump administration.
No.
Yeah.
And that's my point.
Okay.
No. I really appreciate that clarification. So look, I am somebody who believes, if we just even look at healthcare, I don't believe the Affordable Care Act is the end-all, be-all for healthcare reform in this country, okay? And it is important for us right now because there is not a replacement that we are giving people a soft landing right now, because the fear is, when we look at the numbers, millions of people are going to decide they can't afford their health care. And what I want Vermonters to understand, it's not about those people or those families. That raises costs for all of us. And it is important for us at the federal level to be thinking about what are those systemic changes that need to be made so that you're not always so dependent on federal money. But Vermont's tiny. We have an aging population, and we're not the only one in that situation. And we don't have the capacity to backfill a lot of these funds right now. We just don't. Yeah.
What is the end-all, be-all then?
So look, it's in terms of this issue and how we get through this, is that? Yeah. So look, I feel very strongly that Republicans in those districts that are most impacted by the ACA subsidies, and there are a lot of them, are going to be hearing more from their constituents that they can't afford health care and they're going to go without. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, someone I never imagined would be attacking her own leadership on health care. But she has been very public in the last few weeks that no, her own adult children cannot afford these increase in the premiums. I think we're going to see more people on the other side of the aisle saying that. And look, we have to have two things. We have to have some kind of funding mechanism to get us through this government shutdown. But we also have to acknowledge that having a funding stream that does not also address the healthcare crisis that we're in is going to cause us so much more pain down the road, specifically into the new year.
Congresswoman Becca Balint, thank you so much for your time today.
Very happy to be here.
Well, we are going to keep talking healthcare in just a moment. And if you are struggling to navigate the marketplace or have questions about your options during open enrollment season, we'd love for you to call in. You can call us at 800-639-2211 because we're about to be joined by Vermont's healthcare advocate and a local health insurance expert. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us.
Thanks for listening to Vermont Edition, where support comes from UVM Cancer Center, sharing that November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month. Learn how lung screening can save lives at vermontcancer.org.
Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Vermonters who get their health insurance on the exchange face the highest premiums in the country, according to the Public Assets Institute. More than 90% of those Vermonters qualify for federal subsidies. But as we just heard in our interview with Congresswoman Becca Balint, those subsidies might be going down significantly. Without them, average premium rates are projected to double in 2026. There is a lot of uncertainty around these subsidies, but people have to choose their health insurance now. Open enrollment runs through January 15th, and for Medicare, it's through December 7th. If you get your health insurance through your work, you might have some slightly different dates. Now, if you have questions about open enrollment and changes to Medicare and Medicare Advantage, you can give us a call at 800-639-2211 or send us an email to vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. Here in the studio with me now are Vermont healthcare advocates Mike Fisher and Marjorie Stinchcomb. Thank you both for joining us.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Marjorie, could you tell us first a little bit about what you do so our listeners understand you and Mike's areas of expertise?
Yes, I am the helpline director at the Healthcare Advocates Office. I supervise our paralegals. We have 8 paralegals who answer the phone calls that we get from Vermonters. We get about 300 calls a month, so we have about 3,000 cases that we do a year with questions about healthcare. So I'm a lawyer and I supervise them and train them.
Whew. Bless you. That's probably a lot of knowledge to have in your head right now. And Mike, you have a slightly different role there.
Yeah, so Marge and I together represent the leadership of the Office of the Healthcare Advocate, and we work together. Marjorie more on the individual advocacy side and me more on the policy side. But our job together is to help Vermonters get access to care, as straightforward as that.
Yeah. So, Mike, can you start out by helping us put these changes to federal healthcare subsidies, health insurance subsidies, into human terms? I've been seeing this number, 400% of the federal poverty level. That number's getting thrown around a lot. And if you have an income under that, the amount that you pay for health insurance is going to change kind of little to a medium amount, and if you have an income above that, could change a lot more. So, what does that 400% mean for people?
I guess I just want to recognize that this is a very difficult moment to be communicating about this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are in the political sphere who are talking about sort of the politics of this moment and what's going to happen to the subsidies, and they've got an important job. Congresswoman Balint has a really important job to do in talking about advocating for that policy. We also spend time advocating for policies, but I think here today, right now, we're really trying to talk directly to Vermonters about the challenges in front of Vermont families as they face the decision that's in front of them.
Mm-hmm. So help us understand that challenge. What could change? Like, for which Vermont families are we talking?
So you alluded to this a second ago. Healthcare is complicated. Many Vermonters get their insurance through their employer, so nothing's changing for them. Many Vermonters are on Medicare, and there's a lot changing for them, but that's a different topic.
One bucket.
For them. Yep. And then there's also this set of Vermonters, and many Vermonters are on Medicaid, and nothing. There are things changing for them, but not for a little while.
Okay.
But for the set of Vermonters who get their insurance through Vermont Health Connect, they're in the individual market, there are real changes happening to the subsidies that support their affordability. And yes, people above 400% of poverty, current law, has those subsidies going away. And that will represent a real hardship to those Vermonters.
Marjorie, are you all getting a lot of questions right now about these changes to the federal subsidies?
Yes, we're getting a lot of calls because people are concerned because their premiums are going to go up significantly and they're not going to be able to afford their plans for next year. And they've been hearing about it in the news and they're calling us because they're realizing what their premiums are going to cost next year. And they really don't know how they're going to cope with their health insurance.
Well,
so
go ahead.
I think one of the main things we want to say today is, like, we don't want to scare people. Like, there's enough scary about the world right now. that it's super important for people to check out what this means for them. We can't make blanket statements about how this is going to affect a whole population. There are people whose premiums won't go up. There are lower income people who get significant subsidies under 2025 rules, and they'll get significant subsidies under 2026 rules. And then there are also people who, you were just alluding to, those folks who are just above 400% of poverty. Yes, that's a very tough dynamic, and we're worried about the choices those families will have to make. But that's not everybody. And so my fear of this moment is that we scare people away from taking the time and seeing how the 2026 rules impact them.
Yeah, it's important to note that enhanced subsidies might go away, but subsidies will still be here for 2025. So people under 400% of poverty will still have subsidies to help pay for the health insurance.
Mm-hmm. So I want to understand this fear of scaring other people away. I wonder if you're alluding a bit to this death spiral that we keep hearing about, where we see an increase in people leaving the insurance market entirely and going without insurance. That could really wreak havoc on the entire system. And Vermont right now has a very low uninsured rate compared with the national average. Mike, are you concerned that number's about to go up, that people are going to hear about all this and be like, I can't afford insurance, I'm out?
I actually believe that the number of uninsured will go up with the elimination of the enhanced subsidies. Let's be honest. The Affordable Care Act was not affordable under its original formulation. It was the enhanced subsidies that happened originally in the ARPA bill that really, in my opinion, really made it work for the first time, and we really saw a larger segment of both Americans and Vermonters signing up for care, signing up for coverage instead of going uninsured. Yes, our system works if people are covered. That's how it works. We support each other by all being covered. And if the prices go up too much or if the subsidies go down too much, it's very predictable that the healthier people that won't feel the motivation, won't feel the pressure to buy the coverage, and the costs for everyone else will go up.
Yeah. Well, let's take some calls here. We have Martha calling in from Burlington. Martha, go ahead.
Yes, for those of us who are on Medicare Advantage plans that we really like and are now being forced to choose a Medigap plan, what can the state do? And I realize the state doesn't have direct involvement with Medicare as it does with the ACA, but still, what can the state do to encourage or offer incentives for another insurance company or two to again offer Medicare Advantage plans to those of us who live in, say, Chittenden County in my case, or in the other counties in Vermont who are being shafted by this pullout on the Medicare Advantage plans.
And about 26,000 people in Vermont are being affected by this pullout of Medicare Advantage.
I think more like 33,000.
33,
so
okay.
Quite a few. Martha, it's a great question, and yes, there's a tremendous amount of volatility in the Medicare Advantage marketplace as well. There has been for a couple of years, actually, and you alluded to this, but I feel the need to say it. There were no state decisions. There were no decisions about rates. There were no decisions about coverage requirements or anything that impacted this decision. This was a decision by a couple of private insurance companies about how they were going to make money or make ends meet. This is all federal policy that leads to the dynamic we're in.
So is there anything that the state can do, as Martha asked, to incentivize a company to come back and offer a comparable plan?
I mean, I think the thing theoretically we could do is advocate for CMS, for the federal government, to do a better job of reimbursing Medicare Advantage companies. But that's, I think, the dynamic is that the companies are spending more on people's care than they were getting from the federal government for the coverage.
Marjorie, are you getting calls from folks who used to be covered by Medicare Advantage or trying to figure out what to do next?
Yes, we are getting a tremendous amount of calls because it is a very difficult transition because they are coming off the Advantage plans and now they have to find Medigap plans, and they are very expensive. And so the state also could look into the Medigap plans and see if they could look at the pricing of them and see if there's a way that they could regulate that more and the increases, because they are very expensive in Vermont. Because we see that, and we're talking to a lot of Vermonters who have to make that transition, and they don't have a choice. Most Vermonters who are in that position have to go on to original Medicare now and a Medigap plan because they can't be on Part C because it's just not in Vermont.
So Marjorie is right. We could do a better job in our regulation of the Medigap plans. The other thing we can do, we've actually done some in recent times, is increase the subsidies for lower income people on Medicare. The state is actually moved the eligibility up for that starting January 1st. It's the bright spot in our world. About 14,000 Vermonters we think are going to be newly eligible for Vermonters on Medicare are going to be newly eligible for real supports. And we could do a much better job there.
Let's take another call here. We have Matthew calling in from Alberg. Matthew, go ahead.
Hello, my question is about how can we simplify the messaging, because that's very, very confusing, and thank you, Mike Fisher, for putting this up there. Let's try to simplify when people are trying to, get Medicare Advantage, because there's a lot of Medicare, Medicaid, not just fine prints about when people sign up, but it's confusing because it's so complex with education, insurance, and medical in itself in the Vermont system is so complex. How can we ease people's fears of signing up or help them, transition into these insurance, knowing that it's so complex?
Yeah, Matthew, I'm going to toss your question to, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I wanted to toss your question to Marjorie, since you and the paralegals you work with spend a lot of time trying to simplify this for people.
Yes, and I do agree. It's incredibly complex, and unfortunately, it's complex to get onto Medicare when it should be simple. Like, people think it would be simple, but Medicare is a multi-part insurance. And so I just think that more education, and I don't know if CMS could simplify it, which they haven't done, but we, as a healthcare advocate office, we do try to do a lot of consumer education, and on our website, we do a lot of consumer education about Medicare and Medicare enrollment. And I know SHIP also does consumer education about signing up for Medicare and the process to sign up for Medicare. It's not simple, unfortunately, just because there's 4 parts to Medicare if you include Advantage plans. But if you include original Medicare, there's Part A, Part B, and Part D. Mm-hmm. And they all have different enrollment rules. And so there's not a really simple way to describe it really easily. But if you call our office, we talk people through it all the time, and we can help you and give you individual advice on it. We talk to a lot of people going on to Medicare, and that's a lot of the people we talk to. So call our office.
And you both have mentioned CMS. That's the federal government website for Medicare and Medicaid services. David in Rutland's calling in with a question, too. David, go ahead.
Hi. My question is about the Affordable Care Act. I've listened to the media. I've listened to politicians. I've called Vermont Health Connect customer service. Had no success whatsoever in determining the calculation for the subsidies. I did look a little deeper online, and I found the answer to it. And I don't know if really many people know this. Could I just briefly say what I believe it is, and then maybe I can get confirmation on this? Or?
Sure, yes. And we have to take a break in just a moment, so if you don't mind being brief.
Okay. Do you want to take the break, or do you want me to?
No, go ahead.
Get started. Okay. Let's assume you made $40,000 a year. What they would like, the state, is they'd like you to pay 8.5% of your income towards the premium. Let's round that up to 9%. So 9% of 40,000 is 3,600. Okay, so that's 300 per month. Okay, so that's what you're expected, the 300 a month. Now, the benchmark for
David,
that,
you're already getting some head shakes from our guests here, so I think they might have some information that's helpful for you.
So, David, this is exactly why we often, instead of going into this level of detail, say, call somebody to help you walk your family through, because it's not just your income, it's your family size. And so you're correct, at least today in 2025, that people over 400% of poverty are capped at 8.5% of their income. But I think we're talking about, depending on the family size, a family, someone who would be expected to pay less. So the right thing for us to say here is, if you want help, or anybody wants help understanding how the math works for their family, there are people to help. And the Office of the Healthcare Advocate runs a helpline. Can I give the number?
Sure.
I don't think we've done that yet. 800-917-7787. We've got a staff of great advocates who, this is their job, is to help people understand how these really complicated rules. Back to Matthew for a second. I wish the messaging was easier. The messaging isn't easy because the policy is crazy complex. So that's why it really makes sense to consult somebody who can help you understand how it impacts your family.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we can help you today, especially if you have a question about these kind of big picture changes that are going on right now at both the federal and the state level. Maybe you're thinking right now about not paying for health insurance next year because of rate increases. Give us a call and talk us through what you're thinking. Our number is 800-639-2211. We have to take one more quick break, but we will take more of your calls when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. This hour, we are discussing open enrollment season, which started on Saturday, and all the changes to health insurance costs and subsidies that we're experiencing right now. Our guests are with Vermont's healthcare advocate, Mike Fisher, and Marjorie Stinchcomb, who's the helpline director at Vermont Legal Aid. They are here to answer your health insurance questions. You can give us a call at 800-639-2211 or email us, as Lorna Jane did, to vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. So Lorna Jane wrote to us before this show, said that they're a self-employed consultant, and they've received notification that they earn over the $62,500 threshold, and they're no longer qualifying for Vermont Health. I'm quoting here, based on the projections, I'm not going to be able to afford my health care next year. My already very expensive plan has a high deductible, and outside of my annual physical and mammogram, nothing gets covered. My concern is that if I don't enroll, I'm not going to be able to get back in if the program's reinstated sometime after the open enrollment deadline. Are there conversations happening about extending the enrollment deadline and using this challenge as an opportunity to fix this incredibly broken system? That's a big question, that second one. Let's start with the first one. Mike, Marjorie, are you hearing conversations about extending the deadline?
So I heard Congresswoman Balint talk about, she said the word unprecedented a number of times. Yeah. This term frustrates me. It seems like everything today is new and we've never dealt with before. So, of course, we don't know. But I cannot imagine a dynamic where the subsidies are put back in place or some new rule gets put in place where we don't give people an opportunity to have a special enrollment period to come back. That's what I would expect if there is a change. Yeah.
Marjorie, are people asking you about this through the helpline?
Yeah, so we've had some calls, and I think that I agree with Mike that a special enrollment period would be created for people who didn't re-enroll because of this situation, and so they could enroll if they had dropped out.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes a little bit, I think some people are giving a little bit different advice at this moment. Yeah. Should you wait and see what develops, or should you take care of it now?
Right. That's a big question I'm hearing.
And Marjorie and I are in the business of trying to get people to call at all during open enrollment period. I know people hate shopping for health insurance. I know it.
It's horrible.
It's
horrible.
And most people, or many people, wait until the very last minute anyway. So I just can't help but want to say our best advice is that you'd shop for it now and that you make the best decision you can now. If the rules change, yeah, you're going to have to come back and update it. But asking people to wait, I think, just means that more people are not going to do it at all.
Yes, you have until December 15th to make a change for January 1st. So, yeah, we're not encouraging people to wait because we just don't want people to miss that deadline. And you have a chance now to look at the plans and possibly change to a lower tier plan, possibly change to a bronze plan if you're on a higher tier plan. So, yes, Mike and I are not encouraging waiting because we see people who miss the deadline all the time.
What happens if you miss the deadline?
Then possibly then you won't have coverage on January 1st.
Let's take another call here. We have Colin calling in from Burlington. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. My comment is brief. Why are we discussing this? Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic when we clearly should be moving to a more sustainable healthcare delivery model. We're spending twice as much as any other country on the face of the earth, at least twice as much. Our metrics are in the toilet. It's time to shift the conversation. Our focus, it's long past time to focus on moving to a better, more humane delivery model. How many people die stressing about how do they figure out their frickin' health insurance or how they pay for their health care? I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah.
And I would just like to encourage people to, now's the time. We're at an inflection point. We have an opportunity to chunk a system that doesn't work and do better. Let's start talking about that now, please.
Colin, I couldn't agree with you more. You are 100% right that there is a much better way to finance our healthcare system. And I see a little irony. I'll recognize the irony. Here we are, talking about for obvious reasons, talking about the rules that are in front of Vermonters today, because those are the rules in front of Vermonters today. And you're right that we should be envisioning and working towards an entirely different system. We do need partners in the federal government and state government for us to be able to move towards something different. And I sure do look forward to a day when we have that.
So do you think, Mike, for folks like our caller who is feeling this frustration very deeply with this current system and says we need to really change things, but is also, reading the headlines about the stalemate in Washington and the inability of Congress to come up with a better plan. Is the change, do you both think, is it going to happen at the state level or the federal level? I mean, Vermont's premiums are much higher than the rest of the country's, including just in New England. Like, should we be focused on state level change first?
I think we need both. I think that there are dynamics within state and how we reimburse and how much reimburse our hospital systems for Vermonters' care. That is a significant piece of those costs. That's on us. That's holding accountable our insurance regulators and policymakers to bring Vermonters' spending into line with the rest of the country. But we also are highly dependent on the federal government for our healthcare system. Again, Colin is right. This is a flawed system. It's the system we have, and we are very dependent on federal monies to help us run the system.
Marjorie, I'm wondering what your advice might be for a listener who has been reading the headlines, is pretty darn sure their premiums are going to go up a whole heck of a lot in 2026. Maybe they've even looked at those premiums, started comparing plans, and have some sticker shock and are about to put their head in the sand in the way that we've been describing you're hoping people don't do, but somebody out there who's saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe how expensive health insurance could be next year. I can't deal with this. This is too stressful. It's too much. I am just going to hope to hear something in the news about some big change that happens in the next couple of weeks. What is your advice to that person?
I mean, my advice to that person is I would first advise them to call our office. And two, they can also go on the Vermont Health Connect website and look at the plan comparison tool and look at the different plan options. And because there are a variety of plan options, and yes, there will be plans that with sticker shock and also lesser plans. And, our advice as an office is always going to be to encourage people to have some form of coverage versus going without coverage, just because we've seen in our office what happens when someone doesn't have coverage, because that's the time when we have calls of people who have no coverage when they get in an accident and they don't have coverage. So we are going to encourage you to see if there is any way that you can find an affordable plan. And we realize this may be the year that a lot of Vermonters can't afford a plan, and because if they're not extended, it won't be reasonable for especially some of the families in the above 400 FPL group. It's going to be
poverty line.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard, and we're going to look at other options for getting health care. There's some going to federally different clinics, getting hospital financial assistance if you need it. Yeah. But we're going to just, if you call our office, really do a deep dive into all your options and to really see if you can get a plan on Vermont Health Connect before you go uninsured for the year.
Yeah. One thing we haven't mentioned that I think is super important here is that the two carriers are priced very differently. If you're on a plan that is too expensive for you, before you decide not to get coverage, make sure you look at the other plan. I'll be more explicit. Blue Cross is more expensive than MVP this coming year, and I don't have a preference for one carrier over the other. I just care that people get covered, and so it just makes a tremendous amount of sense to make sure you look at both carriers to understand what your costs might be.
Yeah. And Marjorie explained a little bit about why she and your office care that people get covered at all. Mike, could you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I who am I to judge? I have to recognize that for some families who are trying to figure out how to, heat their homes or put food on the table and keep coverage, that families have very tough dynamics. It is better for our system. It is better for, making sure hospitals are paid if we have Vermonters covered. But I also have to honor what families are experiencing. Yeah. One other detail, if we have a second.
Yeah, about 30 seconds.
Is to recognize that another change this year is the elimination of the repayment caps. And so now, more than ever, this coming year, more than ever, it's important for Vermonters to make sure they report their income accurately. If you're a salaried employee and you have a W-2 for all your income, that's easy. If you're a farmer or a contractor or an artist or something, that might be very hard. And again, here's another place. It makes sense to get the help you need to make sure you don't find yourself owing a lot of money back at tax time.
Mike Fisher, Marjorie Stinchcomb with Vermont's Healthcare Advocate and Vermont Legal Aid. Thank you so much for helping guide us through open enrollment season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's show. It was directed by Mary Angish. John Ahrens is our managing producer. Andrea Lorian, Daniela Fierro, and Aaliyah Papes are our producers. Our call screener today was Kelly Delorier, and our theme music is by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.